All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Douglas Cobb. You are in session 2. I will be the moderator for this session. So thank you all for joining us. You are here in session 2, increase quality, equity, and inclusion through course design. You're using an automated Zoom caption during the live event, and we will edit the recording transcripts before we share them with you to be more accurate. At the bottom of the Zoom window, you will see a closed caption button. If you like to use this feature, select closed caption and then choose show subtitles, full view, transcript, or change the subtitle setting. Please pose your questions using the chat function that we'll moderate and discuss with our panelists towards the end of the hour. We'll share how we can continue the conversation online and share some additional resources to support your teaching. Now, I would like to welcome Renee Pillbeam, and I'm sorry, I don't want to slaughter your last name.
Kody Stimpson.
Kody Stimpson. Okay. Thank you very much, and I will hand the mic to them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're so happy to be here with you all, and really hope that the information we're able to present today will be of value to you. My name is Kody Stimpson. I'm the Assistant Director of Quality Assurance for ASU Online. So I work with our instructional design team and faculty, designing and hopefully improving online courses. And with me is Renee here.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Renee Pillbeam. I'm also an assistant director on our instructional design and new media team. And the area that I primarily oversee is our professional development and training. So all of our workshops and webinars to support our faculty for supporting our students in our online environment. So
thank you, Renee.
Yeah.
So today we have a lot of information and items to go through. So the hope is that as we go through this, feel free to post your questions, and at the end we'll address them. We'll also have our email addresses and a link to this slide deck available after, or actually at the last slide, so that you'll have access to all of this information. So just a little bit of background. ASU Online has over 240 fully online degree programs. So the scope in which Renee and I work is really trying to assist faculty as they're either developing online courses or as they are facilitating them. We have each semester, there's 2 sessions, about 7.5 weeks long. And in any given time, there's around 1,500 online courses that are running. So our team works at a very large scale. And so as we go through this, we'll kind of clarify a little bit of that with you. And this is really exciting for us. The Peralta Online Equity and Inclusion rubric has really helped us improve our course designs and best practices that we promote in teaching online. ASU has this mission that's about inclusion and success. And we really try to identify ways that we can make the courses inclusive and make them good experiences for students so that they can succeed. And that's really what our goal is. So it lines really well with Peralta. So for our agenda today, first we'll share some of the course design standards that we're promoting in the online courses. So this is when we have new course developments or new courses that are going to be running online. These are the standards that we try to have be met before the courses actually launch. And then we'll discuss the best practices for teaching online, which is, an online course, there's the design aspect, but then there's also that facilitation and implementing some of these best practices. And so the way we're going to walk through this, as I mentioned, it is a little bit fast paced. We're going to mention all of the design standards, but we're going to spend a little bit more time on those that were added thanks to Peralta. So for our course design standards, we have a checklist, and this document will be available on the last slide. There'll be a link to it. This includes the Quality Matters research-based design standards. Quality Matters is a national program that's faculty-centered and research-based, and they've identified some of the critical components for online courses. So on our design checklist, we kind of adapted the Quality Matters rubric, which will kind of mention some of the different design standards with that. But then recently, we also took the Peralta equity rubric and then implemented some of those recommendations to try to make a single checklist that is reviewed and considered while courses are being developed. And then later, as we talk about course facilitation, we'll also mention some of these recommendations that are there as well. So we're going to begin by sharing some of the design standards. And so this is the first category. It's related just to ASU Online. And so as you're thinking about these design standards, we invite you to think about how some of this will translate over to your particular course. So for us, our courses are typically 7.5 weeks long. So we have we use Canvas learning management system, and we have a Canvas course shell template that has common navigation elements on the left-hand side and module overview pages and a consistent look and feel for students. And that consistency is really helpful here. On this particular page, you can see some of the text is in black. That's like the baseline to meet the standard. You need to have that. And then we also have exemplary examples. So as we go through some of these course design standards, there's so much out there and there's so many different approaches and examples, it's hard to fit it all in. So hopefully as we go through this, you can take some of this and find it helpful. That document that I mentioned that lists all of the design standards, it refers to a lot of the material that's available on the Peralta training website. So you can get access to more of that later as well. But first piece is just to have the Canvas course template. And then we also have a course overview and introduction. This is just to make sure that as students are, entering the course, that they're welcomed, that there's an instructor introduction that kind of makes the course feel like there's a human behind it. Some students feel like when they're taking an online course that they're just sitting at a computer, but we want them to feel like, hey, there's an instructor that's there. It's alive. And we encourage faculty to have these different connection statements in their welcome, such as, I value your success, that letting them know there's a lot of different resources to help them, saying something like, I'm supporting your journey to meet your goals, or I'm excited to connect with you. Things like that let them know that you're available, that you're real, that you're interested in their success. And now Renee will discuss this next.
Yeah, so this is one of our primary points where we're very deliberate about incorporating the Peralta pieces. And so the first standard here is acknowledge human bias. And so encouraging faculty when possible to acknowledge that human bias exists, that they have it, that students have it, and then really encouraging them to dig into that. Having students think outside their frame of reference, take things from a different point of view, perhaps identify prominent people in the field and whether biases exist, perhaps even having conversations about how these biases evolved, what were the barriers in place to create the biases. Sometimes I think there's a tendency to not want to talk about it because it does require some vulnerability and there could be potentially some shame attached to that. And so really trying to take on having those conversations and opening it up so that students can also start to understand that this exists and we need to just know that it exists and then work to work around it and to evolve in that way. And so one example that we have is in the Cronkite School in a media ethics course. Students are asked to visit the implicit bias test and to test each of their own biases and then start to engage in an analysis of any surprises that they found from that and really starting to acknowledge their own biases and how that plays into how they view the world. So, and then our Next one here is learning objectives and alignment. I won't spend a lot of time here. Of course, we want to make sure that our courses are aligned, that we have very clear and measurable learning objectives so that students understand what will be asked of them, but that then we are also making sure that we are measuring what it is that we told them they would be responsible for. And similar in this regard, so measurement and instruction. So really making sure that the course grading policy is clear and available at the beginning of the course, so students have a very good sense of how they will be assessed in the course, excuse me. And also providing really clear instructions and rubrics. So again, it's that the rubrics are a great way to communicate to students what the expectations are to receive certain criteria. In addition, a nice bonus to that is it can also really help with streamlining grading. And so really just making sure that those pieces are very clear and known upfront to students. And then in a similar vein, making sure there's essentially a wide variety of assessments and opportunities for students to know how they're doing in the course. So of course, things like scaffolding, if it's a large writing assignment, encouraging faculty to have students have a number of opportunities to know how they're doing, perhaps some self-checks or practice quizzes. And so just a lot of opportunities for students to know how they're doing, to be able to get feedback, then to be able to engage in help-seeking behaviors if they need to or want to at those points. And so really just having that opportunity for students to know how they're doing in the course. And then here's another that we were really deliberate about with including from our Peralta colleagues is demonstrating the value of diversity. And so really representation matters. And so making it known to students, students can see their identities in the course. So in images, in being deliberate about who's authoring the materials that you're including in your course, bringing in materials that challenge those stereotypes that might exist. Again, opening up conversations of if representation isn't in the field, why isn't it? You know, what led to that? And really trying to get students involved in understanding how these things occur. Of course, having explicit statements that learning happens in the context of culture, having opportunities for students to talk about their lived experiences and bring that into the course materials is really important as well.
Thank you, Renee. And then next is connecting the course to students' lives. So that's essentially, as we're designing the instructional activities, we want students to be thinking about their own lives and reflect on how the material will impact their future. So as you're designing the assignments and activities, you might think about how students can take that material and make it personally relevant or relevant to their culture or their community, or simply just discuss how the theory or whatever it is that they're talking about, how that can be applied in practice. There's a lot of different news resources and articles and things that can be pulled in. And essentially, this is just asking that, that we try to make the course as relevant as possible to students' lives. And Renee has the next one here.
Great, yeah. And so another piece of our standards is the accessibility and support services. And so this is kind of built into our particular template, but just again, making sure that students know that these resources are available, where to find them. So again, perhaps in a course tour video or something, showing students where these items are and that they're available to them to help support them in their learning experience.
Thank you. And then next, course facilitates ease of use. So that includes accessibility as well as just having the content so that it's easy for students to go from one online course to another. This is why having like a template with common navigation elements or module overviews that kind of have similar look and feel for students can be really helpful. But that also includes making sure that the content is readable, that the text is clear, The font and color use is accessible to students, and they're able to just jump in and kind of focus on the material that is being taught versus getting lost in the navigation and other areas. We also try to encourage digital course materials. So in a lot of courses, students might have to still purchase a textbook, a printed textbook. But if at all possible, we encourage faculty to, identify a digital alternative. And this is partially because we have students all around the world. Sometimes it can take a long time for a textbook to arrive. And then also to have it digitally, it opens up more opportunities for making the course, accessible, and students can access it day one instead of having to wait for something to be mailed. So we always encourage that, whether it be a digital textbook or just creating the, identifying the resources and getting them in the Canvas course in a way that is accessible to students.
Great, yeah. And so similar to the other piece I talked about, accessible text and images. And so really making sure that we provide that access to those.
Look at you getting started.
Oh, sorry. And so again, paying attention to this to not create additional barriers to students who might be using assistive technologies. We actually had a instructional designer meeting this morning with our wider group, and we had someone in talking about accessibility, and we learned that it's approximately 1 in 5 students have some type of disability in accessing learning materials. And so about 1 in 11 are actually reported and supported at ASU, but there is findings that there's more of that. And so just making sure that we have accessible text and images. This of course helps all of our learners, but especially supports learners who may be using different assistive technologies. We also have the Ally technology with our Canvas learning management system. And so ensuring that we're supporting faculty in how to use that to kind of check the accessibility of their courses.
Thank you. And just really quickly, just so that you know, we also have, these are a couple of the other standards about citations and copyright, promoting active learning in the online activities. I mentioned at the end, we have the full document for you to be able to get a little bit more deep into some of the specifics and recommendations that are there. But this concludes the time where we're discussing course design. So everything that Renee and I have been talking about is really just setting up the course to be ready for students. And then the first day of class begins, and the faculty, we pivot our role from course designers or designing the course to then facilitating it and implementing best practice. So for the next few minutes, Renee and I are going to walk through the best practices that we promote for teaching an online course and how that includes approaches to increase accessibility as well as inclusion and making it effective. So as we go into course facilitation, on that document, you'll also see a list of best practices for teaching online. And these are the practices that we're going to walk through with you now. So the first piece here is about refreshing the course and updating it for the session. And Renee, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, sorry, navigating between screens so I can get to my parts here. Yes, so we have students from all around the world. And so as Kody mentioned already, making sure that you communicate the expectations to students around the materials that are needed so that they can acquire those and have those at the start of the course. And then updating the syllabus for the session. So going through and making sure that all the dates, everything is still accurate there. Any links, if there are like Zoom sessions or anything, everything's relevant and updated. Refreshing the course pages, again, looking for any of those dates that might be in there, anything else that needs to be updated to be appropriate for the current term. And then providing that course introduction. So welcoming students to the course, whether it's a course tour or course introduction video, but kind of starting to establish that instructor presence and that welcoming environment for the learners.
Thank you. And then welcoming all students. And this is essentially just creating an inclusive and supportive environment. So in your, and it says in here, in your first communication. So that's the best time to really let students know that you're available, that you're interested in their success. The specific best practice here says to encourage diverse ideas, experiences, and perspectives, and then essentially just be explicit about valuing diversity and inclusion in your course. This will allow students in the discussion forums and in other areas of the course to be able to share their perspectives. So if you set that up, right from the very beginning, then students will be more likely to feel like it's a safe place for them to be able to share their perspectives and ideas, which helps them feel welcome. And then next, we have offering virtual office hours.
Yeah, do you want me to take this one, Kody?
Yeah.
I'll take. So we do try to encourage faculty to offer virtual office hours for students. We recommend having availability of 3 to 6 hours per week. There's a number of different ways you can approach this. It's good if you are scheduling them to have, a good range of times because students may be in different time zones and such. We've also actually been experimenting a little bit more recently with sort of impromptu or like messaging students just before they're starting. And we're getting a little bit more attendance that way. But again, just creating these environments where students can come. We've also seen like very informal coffee chats, things where students, especially given the current times and perhaps a feeling of isolation, are able to just come and connect with people who are in their course, talk with their instructors and their faculty, even if it's not the pressure of having to have a question or something to ask. Just the time to pop in and say hello can be a really valuable experience for the learners.
Thank you. And next, promoting academic integrity. And academic integrity can look different for students, and their understanding of what that means really varies. So it's a good idea to kind of communicate what academic integrity is within the context of your discipline, what that looks like, what you'll be looking for. You can consider different conversations that you might provide at the moment of the course when students are most likely to need to know that information. And then just help them recognize that, that these expectations exist. We actually have a little pamphlet, and I have it linked in here in the slides, that it's called Cheaters Never Prosper. We share it with all faculty, and it has different approaches to consider to help minimize cheating in online courses. Some of those approaches are design considerations. So when you're designing the course and setting it up, you can do things that will help minimize cheating. Another one is while you're facilitating the course, different things that you can communicate in there. And then the third is about the technology tools that are available as far as proctoring and different approaches that you may have available to you. But so that's kind of something on the instructor end. But as far as the students, Brown University has these tips, and I linked to their article here that tells a little bit more about it. But it's really just important to have that conversation so that students know what academic integrity means within your course and what you'll be looking for. And the next is probably one of the most important best practices for teaching online.
Yeah, so this one is focused on creating a visible instructor presence. And so number of ways that you can do that. Of course, there are announcements and emails that can go out to students. So communicating with them regularly. I would definitely recommend perhaps having some sort of plan or frequency with which you communicate in that way. In the course that I teach, I try to, our lead instructor will send something at the beginning of the week, and then I always try to follow with something on Thursday of the week. So kind of try to hit them just before the weekend, get on their radar again. But I think they then come to sort of expect that cadence of communication. Some other great ways are through creating videos. So just even a short informal, hey, welcome to the class. This is me. This is kind of what brought me to this profession and this passion. This is why I care about it. Maybe a personal story from your own background could be really impactful for students to kind of draw them in again to getting to know you as the instructor. Of course, facilitating discussions can be another way. I think sometimes we get involved, you can get involved in kind of reading through and following the conversation, but just trying to find little ways to let students know that you're there doing that, whether it's a comment. Certain different platforms will allow for even like the thumbs up, or an instructor, what's the word I'm looking for? Just basically affirming that maybe the answer was a correct answer, things like that. So students can just see that you're there and you're watching the conversations that are happening. And another way is what we just talked about a bit, was the virtual office hour. So having opportunities for students to drop in. And I saw, Angela, that you shared that you use a Calendly, which allows students to add themselves to your calendar. That's awesome. That's a great way to kind of have sort of informal opportunities for students to connect with you. So yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Renee, I accidentally jumped up the slide.
All good.
And then next we have responding timely.
Yeah, so kind of in the same regard, setting an expectation with students of when they can expect a response from you, and then being within that, right? And so letting them know how often they can expect to hear from you. If they email you, when will you respond? And that's good in both directions, of letting them know, if there are certain times where you may be less available, just for whatever reason, but they have an expectation then, and so they can work around that. We try to encourage having responses within 24 hours, up to 48 hours. Again, I would just make sure that that's communicated to students so that they know, if assignments due this time, I need to start at this time, so that if I have any questions, I know how long it can take me to get a response. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say there. So
thank you. And then next, this is kind of a general best practice: offer flexibility. Students are taking online courses for a lot of different reasons, and often they work full time, or they have other community or life obligations. And so being as flexible as we can, as you think about due dates, or if you're proctoring exams, timeframes for when students need to take that exam, just being flexible across the different time zones. It's kind of an ongoing consideration that really helps students move along, especially when you have students that are living in different areas where there might be weather or other considerations. Certainly during COVID, there's different needs that they have as well. So any amount of flexibility that you can provide, and any clarity that you can provide with that, can be helpful for students. Then we also encourage students to connect. And so earlier I mentioned the importance of having students connect the course material that you're teaching to them and their lives and their community. However, also you can help students connect to your institution. So there are special things about your institution, and you want students to connect to that. So share those and include those as you can in the announcements. We all, hope students complete the degree that they're seeking rather than just the course. And so helping them make that connection of, gosh, this is a great institution. What is it? What services and resources are available? Make that really as clear as you can to them. You can also help students feel like they're connected to the institution when you kind of talk about different student resources and services that you have available. All of that helps them feel like a connection. So again, when you think back to the very first online interactions you had with a computer, and some students are getting on there and they may feel like it's just a computer-based course, and it's like, no, we don't want them to feel like that. We want them to feel like, no, we're here, there's people, this is life. The great things that you get at your institution are still available. They're just a little bit different, and kind of communicating that and showing that passion and interest can go a long way to help keep students engaged and help them be retained. And then to go along with that is this fostering an inclusive community, and Renee will speak about this.
Yeah, so we already talked a little bit about the importance of identifying the human biases and empowering students to do the same and engage in those conversations. And so another piece we'll talk about here is paying equal attention to all students. And this can vary in how this is accomplished, but I think just being really mindful about this is important. If there's an opportunity, perhaps in like an introduction discussion or something, to respond to each of the students and welcome them to the class. Using the different tools that are available in the LMS. If a student has missed an assignment or a couple of assignments, a personal outreach, I think, can do so much in that regard. I talked with the faculty recently that they really shifted their perspective on this from, students should reach out to me if they have help. Well, there are some students who might not because they're afraid that that might reinforce stereotypes or just make them feel as though they aren't smart enough to be there or something. And so kind of being mindful of that, perhaps hesitancy and help-seeking behaviors and reaching out to students to ask them how they're doing, what do they need additional support with, I think can be a really important and powerful piece. And I will share too, I think many of us may have heard of this, but a recent Stanford study showed how bias can show up just through the students' names in discussions, and that white male names that appear as white male often get more responses and feedback than other students. And so I think just being mindful of those things and very deliberate about how you reach out and interact with each of your students can be a really powerful piece.
And these are just a few additional considerations for building instructor presence, communicating the purpose of the learning activities, certainly providing helpful feedback, actively facilitating the discussions, and providing guidance and ensure accountability with group work. So if in your courses, if you have group work activities, it's critical to kind of communicate the accountability piece there and to help students know, what do I do if someone on my team's not, pulling their weight or working well, to be able to set that up and clear. So these are just a few additional approaches that we promote for best practice for building and creating that instructor presence. And then next we have tracking student progress. And so depending on your learning management system, really any system that you may be using has the grade center. This is essentially just encouraging faculty to look in there and see which students aren't participating, especially at the very beginning of class. If they're not caught within the first week or two, then they're probably not going to, pass the course. So especially at that beginning point, but then periodically as time permits, it's a great idea just to go in there and see, how are students performing, who are those that aren't moving forward, and then perhaps reach out to them, as Renee mentioned. This can also be helpful because you can kind of see which assignments and learning activities students are struggling with and which you might want to improve or modify to be able to help students the next time it's offered. So tracking their progress and reaching out. And that brings us to collecting knowledge about students.
Yeah, so it's great to consider some different ways that you can learn more about who your students are. Perhaps this is like a pre-course survey where they have a chance to communicate the name they'd like to go by, perhaps if they want to share their pronouns, or any other information about what they might need to be successful, how they do their best work, or maybe even sharing about their own, how they manage their learning and their time and things like that, to just kind of learn more about who your students are and how you can support them. When we share the link to the slide deck, there's also a resource here about 3 ways student data can inform your teaching. So that link will be available as well. And then as the course is going, making sure that you're checking in on those formative assessments, again, kind of seeing if a student who is normally performing well has faltered and reaching out. And again, just trying to really get to know who your students are and how you can best support them. Even again, in a way of instructor presence, perhaps there's a piece of content or a topic that a lot of students have struggled with. And so maybe coming back and doing another short video to address that and further clarify, because you've seen that students are struggling in that area, can be a really important thing as well. So let's see, do I have this one as well? Yeah, okay. And so trying, again, guiding students thinking and behavior. So looking at different roles that you can take as the facilitator or the teacher to help promote the student retention and success. And so I think thinking about different ways that we can interact with our students or how we can approach our teaching is really helpful as well. So a couple of the different roles identified here are the synthesizer. So someone who synthesizes these diverse viewpoints. A moderator, perhaps you take on more of a neutral participant role and try to keep students more on track of the topic. Perhaps taking on the role of a challenger, so presenting opportunities for students to reassess how they've thought about something. We're running our masterclass for teaching online right now, and someone recently shared a really good script for a perception check that just said, here's what I interpreted from what you wrote. Did you mean this? Did you mean this or something else? And so again, kind of trying to get students to think about and perhaps consider that there may be ways that things were viewed, or there are different points of view that they could take. So, and then of course a commenter. So kind of presenting again the insights and ideas that are evolving from the topics that are being discussed in the course. So some different ways to take on the facilitator role.
Thank you. And then reviewing the course materials. So every time the course is offered, or at least periodically, there are a few different approaches that you can do to help ensure the course is accessible, compliant, and supports equitable opportunities for all students. So these links here will go to some ASU options, but first there are accessibility guides which kind of outline how to ensure that your documents are accessible to students. Renee mentioned this tool is called Ally. It's an accessibility tool in Canvas, our learning management system, and it kind of identifies what elements of the course aren't accessible, and it kind of gives a percentage rating on that. And so that's a tool that we particularly use. There may be others out there. The librarian at your institution can be very helpful, because sometimes there are, there was that day where people would take a textbook and they would photocopy a chapter, and it's now PDF and it's still living in the course, and students open it up and no screen reader can read it, and it's maybe scanned like this. So connect with the librarian to find the resources that can be accessible. We have a media studio, which is really where faculty create videos, welcome videos, and lectures, micro lectures, and that type of content. And so as you're creating that, you can keep in mind really much of what we talked about as far as creating that inclusive environment, and also just creating videos and things that will help students feel supported. The documents I mentioned, this is just another link that has how to make your documents accessible. And then considering your global audience, since it doesn't matter where students are living today. If we went back in time 10, 15, 20 years ago, we'd all probably be living in different places. And so it's great to consider the global audience and those differences as the course material is being created. Trying to stay away from using regional words or phrases or slang that maybe not everyone will understand. So anyway, so just reviewing those course materials. And then next is addressing bias, microaggressions, and stereotypes. And this can be a challenge, but if you start off the course, talking about creating that inclusive environment, then as things come up, perhaps in the discussion forum or in some of the assignments, some other areas of the course, addressing it and kind of talking through those can be really helpful. Renee is going to mention a resource that we've been using and learning called To Be Welcoming, that is a great opportunity to kind of hone in on our individual biases and be able to begin thinking of different approaches that we can do to help address stereotypes, and when we see people say things or approach things differently, how we can help with that. And then this last one is just a few additional recommendations that are related to teaching online. You know, always be open to more training. There's always so much more to learn, even if we've been teaching online for many years. Learn the, you know, obviously learning the learning management system, you need to know how to use that, but be open to different trainings. Review the different resources that are available at the institution. Understand the tech support and the services available to students so that you can leverage that and communicate that to students. And then, of course, promoting digital literacy to help students, again, know where to go to be able to get access to accurate and authentic materials that will help them throughout their course. And that that was kind of a fire hose of us, you know, talking about design standards and approaches to design an online course. And then we talked about course facilitation practices or best practices for teaching online. And now we're going to share some of the different approaches that we've been considering and implementing as it relates to workshops that increase quality, equity, and inclusion. And Renee will discuss these with you.
Yeah, so in supporting faculty in doing all of these things, we offer a wide variety of webinars and workshops. So we run anywhere from 4 to 10 a month. They're usually about 30 to 60 minutes. We have over 70 topics that we offer in a year. And so in 2020, we had over 3,200 registrations. And so these are really designed and delivered by various experts in our group. So it's our instructional design community, our media community. We work with libraries, we work with copyright experts, and all others around the university. We have a senior cultural global advocate person that we work with to deliver some of these as well. So we really tried then to provide the support to our faculty to learn about these topics and learn about how to do these things in their online courses. And so on the next slide here is just a kind of a quick sampling of some of the things that we have actually coming up later this month. And so our workshops are available there. Most of them are available to the public. There's just the masterclass for teaching online is a fully internal experience. But the rest of these are open and available. And so we would welcome anyone to register and attend those. And then I'll just talk really quick, so I know we're getting close here on time. So kind of our flagship experience is our masterclass for teaching online. And so some of the primary things that this experience achieves, it's a 2-week asynchronous experience. We run it 4 times per year. But I think what's especially great about this is that faculty are in as students and they have due dates and assignments. And so it's a great empathy building experience to kind of understand what it's like to be an online student. It also helps understand what it's like to navigate these different technologies and platforms. So they get a chance to experience what these things are like and make decisions about how they want to structure their course. Another great piece of this is the peer sharing. And so faculty do a lot of exchanging. We have a lot of really rich discussion around things that they've tried in their online course. We have a huge range and diversity with disciplines and with years of experience teaching online. So it's a great place to see how a lot of these conversations evolve and see kind of the sharing that happens between the faculty there. And then we also have a spinoff of this that we did this last year, especially in response to the pandemic. And so this is a version of the masterclass, but this is a self-paced on-demand experience. And I think I can add the link to this one to the notes too, so that when we share the slides here, you'll have that as well. But again, this is another place where we're just trying to offer more support to our faculty around these topics as well. And then, as Kody mentioned, one thing that our team has done and committed to doing is completing the 15 short courses on the To Be Welcoming series. And so, as you mentioned, these go over a variety of different biases. And so we thought it was really important for us to continue to build our knowledge in this space as well. And so that's something that our team has committed to. You get a little certificate for each of the ones that you complete. And so again, just trying to give ourselves that knowledge and experience so that when we're working with faculty and working with courses, we can also help identify places where we can improve the course and improve the student experience. And so with that, I think that brings us to just under our time here, which is great. And our emails and contact information. Oh, looks like my email's not there. I can change that now.
Sorry about that.
All good.
So, and the links to the slides are here, as well as that document. So I'll go ahead and let's see. I'm not sure if there are any questions that came up. Since I was screen sharing, I wasn't able to actually see those. But if there are any questions anyone has, you're welcome to message them.
Many of the questions were just requests for your email and the slides.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Any of the specific questions you want us to address? Or if not, you're welcome to email us. Anytime, that's totally fine too.
I think that's it. Other than that, other than links you would use for stock photos, that was a big question. Other than that, that was it. So we're right here up against the hour at 12:45. So their emails are in the chat, and they will be following you so everyone can follow up with them. And thank you for attending this session.